Costco sells a hot dog and a soda for $1.50. You walk past the food court, you smell the onions, and there it is. The same little combo it's been serving since the 1980s. Same price, not a penny more. Now think back to what $1.50 bought when Reagan was president. A movie ticket, a gallon of gas, nearly two. Since then, almost everything you can name has quietly crept upward, year after year, decade after decade. Coffee climbed, candy bars shrank and climbed. Rent doubled, then doubled again. The whole world of prices drifted up like a slow tide, and nobody thought twice, because that's just what prices do. Everything moved. The hot dog didn't. It just sat there on the menu board, frozen in time, a stubborn little number that refuses to grow up while the rest of the economy raced past it. And that is genuinely strange. And a price that refuses to move for that long isn't just charming, it's a math problem. Because everything that goes into building that hot dog has quietly gotten more expensive around it. Start with the obvious pieces. The sausage, the bun, the soda in that big paper cup. Each one is a raw ingredient someone had to grow, mill, mix, and ship across the country to a warehouse counter. Now add the parts you don't see on the tray. The worker gripping the tongs, the gas for the grill, the refrigeration humming behind the counter, labor and power that climb year after year, no matter what the sign says. And then the biggest hidden cost of all, the floor itself. That food court occupies real estate inside a massive building, land and lighting and rent, all of it charged against every single item sold there. Stack all of that up and it comes to more than $1.50. It has to. The pieces alone cost more than the whole. So the money keeping that price alive has to be coming from somewhere else entirely. So if the hot dog can't be paying for itself, look at the shelves behind it. And here's where Costco starts behaving like no store you know. Because on almost everything it sells, it refuses to make much money at all. Most retailers work backwards from a target. They buy a shirt, then decide how much profit they want on top, and stack the markup as high as the shopper will tolerate. That gap is where a normal store lives. Costco does the opposite. It sets a ceiling. Internally, the rule is that markup on most goods stays low, single digits over what Costco itself paid the supplier. On premium items, the cap runs a little higher, but never far. Sell a case of paper towels for barely more than you paid for it, and the money left over is a sliver, so thin it can vanish the moment rent ticks up, or a truck breaks down, or a light bill lands. Which raises an obvious problem. A store this size, hundreds of billions passing through it, running on margins that thin should be one bad quarter from the edge. That much volume at almost no profit per item sounds like a way to go broke slowly. And yet Costco doesn't just survive on this, it thrives, pulling billions in profit out of a model that seems designed to give money away. Which means the profit has to be coming from somewhere that isn't the shelf at all. So if Costco is barely making a dime on the stuff on its shelves, the money to keep the lights on has to be coming from somewhere. And it is. You just paid it before you ever grabbed a cart. That little card at the door, the one they check before you can even walk in, that is not a formality. That is the actual thing Costco is selling, the annual fee to be allowed inside. Here's the flip that reorganizes everything. The groceries, the electronics, the giant tubs of nuts, all of it is close to a giant break-even machine. The real profit walks in with your renewal. And this is not a rounding error. In recent years, membership fees have delivered the majority of Costco's operating profit. In some years, well over 70% of it. The store part almost washes out. Read that again in your head. Costco makes most of its money before it sells you a single thing. The fee is collected at the door, whether you buy one hot dog or a cart stacked to the ceiling. Which means Costco isn't really a store that happens to charge a fee. It is a club that happens to run a store. The building full of merchandise is there to justify the card. And that changes what everything on the shelf is for. So if the fee is where the money lives, look at what that frees the shelves to do. The merchandise no longer has to carry the profit. It just has to move, and move cheaply. Picture a normal store. It buys a box for a few dollars, sells it for more, and that gap is how it eats. The gap is survival. Every price has to feed the business. Costco already ate at the door, so it can shrink that gap down to almost nothing. It sells the box for barely more than it paid, close enough to cost that the shelf itself makes almost no profit. And here's where it gets clever. A store that keeps almost none of your money on each item can offer a price nobody else can match. The low price isn't a promotion. It's baked into the whole design. Those stunning prices do a job. They pull people through the door and make the card worth buying in the first place. The cheap shelf isn't the sacrifice. It's the bait for the thing that actually pays. So the low prices pull members in. But that is only the first push on a wheel that, once it starts turning, keeps turning itself. Watch what happens next. More members walk through the door. And every one of them is buying the same paper towels, the same rotisserie chicken, the same enormous jar of peanut butter. That means Costco needs a mountain of each. Now walk into the supplier's office as the Costco buyer. You are not asking to buy a truckload. You are asking to buy the whole factory's run for the season. That kind of order changes the conversation completely. Supplier will shave the price to the bone for an order that big because one giant reliable buyer is worth more than 100 small nervous ones. So Costco's cost per item drops, and here is where the loop closes. Lower cost per item lets Costco keep its shelf prices stunningly low. Low prices pull in even more members. More members mean even bigger orders. Bigger orders squeeze even better deals. Round and round it goes. That is the flywheel. Heavy to start, but once it spins, each turn feeds the next with almost no extra effort. A competitor trying to match those prices would have to build the whole wheel first. And that takes decades. A loop that powerful didn't design itself. Someone had to decide on purpose to leave money on the table and then hold that line for decades. And to understand why, you have to meet the man who started in a grocery store bagging other people's shopping. His name was Jim Sinegal. He didn't come up through business school or Wall Street. By most accounts, he started at the very bottom of retail, loading bags at a checkout counter, watching how a store actually moves goods from a loading dock to a customer's car. That ground floor view stuck with him. When he helped launch Costco, he brought one stubborn idea with him. Instead of charging whatever the market would bear, he set a hard ceiling on how much the store could mark anything up. At the very start, the goods went out to small businesses at a markup of only 8 or 9% over what Costco itself had paid. Not 30, not 50, barely a sliver on top of cost. That was the whole rule. To a normal retailer, that sounds like a suicide note. A thin sliver of margin can't pay for staff, rent, trucks, lights. Sinegal was betting the volume would be so enormous that a sliver, multiplied by everything, still added up. The market got its first real look in December of 1985, when Costco went public on the NASDAQ. A young company, a strange low-margin philosophy, now open for anyone to buy into. And the odd little rule about markups? It never really went away. That old markup rule tells you Sinegal never planned to get rich off the shelves. So when the smell of grilled hot dogs hits you near the exit, understand this. That food court is not a restaurant, it is bait. Every big store has a trick like this. A product priced so low it actually loses money on purpose. Retailers call it a loss leader. The point was never the item. The point is getting your body through the door. And a hot dog is the perfect loss leader. It is cheap to make, it feeds a family, and it lands right when you are tired and hungry from pushing a cart the size of a canoe around a concrete floor. But here is where it gets clever. The hot dog does more than feed you. It makes a promise. It quietly whispers that if this place will sell you a full meal for pocket change, everything else in the building must be a bargain too. That whisper is worth a fortune. Because trust is the hardest thing for a store to earn. Most shoppers can't compare thousands of prices, so they grab one thing they can judge and let it stand in for everything else. So the hot dog isn't lunch. It's a billboard you can eat. A little loss that buys the one thing no advertising can fake. The gut feeling that you are never being overcharged here. That feeling is what keeps you coming back. So if the hot dog is a promise, then the price on it is the fine print of that promise. And a promise only works if it never wavers. Which is exactly the pressure Costco has lived under for decades. Because everything else about that little meal has crept upward. The bun costs more. The meat costs more. The labor costs more. Every input has drifted north for years, and the number on the food court has not moved a single cent since the 1980s. There is a story that gets told inside the company, passed around like a family legend. A younger executive supposedly warned the founder that they were losing money on the combo and wanted to raise it. By most accounts, the answer was not a debate, it was a threat. As the story goes, the founder told him plainly, raise the price on that hot dog and he'd be killed. It was a joke, mostly, but it carried a real rule underneath it. The price was not up for discussion. Ever. So when the math finally broke, Costco faced a choice most companies never even see as a choice. Raise the price and protect the profit, or protect the price and go fix the cost instead. And here's where it gets clever. Around 2009, when its outside sausage supplier ran into problems and the margins pinched, Costco didn't touch the price. It started making the sausage itself, in-house, under its own Kirkland label. Squeeze the cost, hold the promise. The $1.50 stayed exactly where it was. And protecting a price is only half of Costco's trick, because there's another move happening on the shelves, quiet enough that most shoppers never notice they're being handed it. It sits right next to the brand you came in for. In 1995, Costco launched its own label. They named it Kirkland Signature, after the Washington town where the company's headquarters once stood. A house brand. Costco's own goods, sitting on Costco's own shelves. Here's the clever part. A national brand has to spend fortunes on advertising, on packaging, on middlemen, all baked into what you pay. Kirkland skips most of that. Same factory, often the very same product, minus the marketing tax. The shopper wins twice. The Kirkland item costs them less than the name brand beside it. And because there's no middleman skimming the top, Costco can pocket a slightly fatter margin while still charging you less. Both sides feel like they won. It worked so well, it stopped being a side project. Kirkland grew to account for nearly a third of everything Costco sells, and it keeps growing faster than the rest of the store. A private label that quietly became a giant. And notice what it does for the low prices we've been circling. When your own brand undercuts the name brands have to sharpen their pencils too. Kirkland doesn't just add margin. It drags the whole store cheaper. That private brand keeps the value flowing, but the value doesn't stop at what's on the shelf. It's baked into the building itself, into every choice about how the place is laid out. Walk in and there's no dropped ceiling, no polished floor, no soft lighting, just concrete and steel racks stacked to the roof. That bare warehouse look isn't laziness. It's the store selling straight from its own storage. Now look at the choices. Most stores stock dozens of versions of the same thing. Costco picks one, maybe two, and buys a mountain of it. Fewer choices means bigger orders, and bigger orders mean lower prices. Then there's the size. Everything comes in bulk. A tower of paper towels, a slab of cheese, a jug of shampoo you could bathe in. Big packages move more product per trip and cut the cost of handling each item. And notice how the aisles keep shifting. That great deal you spotted last month? Gone. In its place, something new and unexpected. Costco calls this the treasure hunt, and it's not an accident. That rotation does two jobs. It clears through limited time bargains fast, so nothing lingers and racks up storage cost. And it teaches you to buy now, because it might not be here tomorrow. Speed is the whole design. But all that clever floor design points at one number that matters more than any single sale. Not whether you buy today, whether you come back next year and pay the fee again. Here is why that renewal is the whole game. A fee you pay once is a nice bonus. A fee that renews year after year from tens of millions of the same members becomes something a company can count on before the year even starts. Think of it like a subscription hiding inside a store. The membership renews so reliably that Costco can practically pencil in that revenue ahead of time, steady and predictable, while the shelves churn and change beneath it. So every warehouse becomes a machine built to protect one thing: your reason to renew. The low prices, the treasure hunt aisles, that stubborn hot dog, all of it is really asking the same quiet question: was it worth the card? And when the answer stays yes, the fees keep flowing in a smooth, dependable stream, which is exactly why Costco guards renewal harder than it guards the price of almost anything on the floor. But all those renewals pile up into something predictable. But step back from the counter for a second and look at the whole machine at once, because the scale of it is genuinely hard to hold in your head. In a single year, Costco moves hundreds of billions of dollars in sales. Not profit, sales. That is the sheer river of goods flowing across the registers. Boxes of paper towels and rotisserie chickens and tires, all of it barely marked up. Now here's the sleight of hand. Out of that enormous river, only a thin sliver actually stays. The profit that lands at the bottom is measured in billions, not hundreds of billions, a trickle next to the torrent. And most of that surviving sliver, it didn't come from the shelves at all. The merchandise runs close to break even by design. The profit that keeps the lights on comes overwhelmingly from the fee people paid at the door. That is the whole trick laid bare. Sell mountains of stuff at almost no margin, and let the tiny yearly card cover the profit. Thin markup times gigantic volume, plus fees on top. 2 modest streams, 1 staggering result. So all those billions trace back to a system that barely profits on the shelf. Which brings us to the strangest item in the whole building. The cheapest thing there. The hot dog was never meant to earn a cent. And here is the twist the whole story was leaning toward. Because the hot dog loses money, it does a job that a profitable hot dog never could. It tells you the price is real, that nothing here is quietly padded. That is the curious part. The item that makes the least is the one that makes everything else believable. $1.50 of proof, sitting by the exit, vouching for every price behind it. So the next time you unwrap that hot dog, know what it really cost the company, and know what it buys you back, not lunch. A reason to trust the place. That is the whole trick, sitting on a paper napkin. So what is your version of the hot dog? The price, the rule, the little thing you walk past every day and never quite question? Drop it in the comments, and subscribe so the next answer finds you when you least expect it.